I need to tell you about a soccer match that happened in 2003 that literally no one was supposed to witness. A final that broke every rule imaginable, turned a small town upside down, and somehow became the most talked about sporting event in that city's entire history. And here's the thing that makes this absolutely insane. Technically, this game never officially happened. Let me explain. Picture this. It's late October in Riverside, a town of about 40,000 people tucked away in the Midwest where football means high school glory and community pride means everything. Two rival high schools, Riverside North and Riverside South, had been battling for the district championship for decades. But this particular year, something went catastrophically wrong with the playoff system. And what happened next turned into absolute madness. The District Athletic Association had scheduled the championship final for October 23rd at the main stadium. Both teams had fought through their brackets, both were undefeated, and the entire town had been buzzing about this matchup for weeks. Season tickets were sold out. Local businesses had closed early. People had requested time off work. This wasn't just a game, this was the event of the year. Then, 72 hours before kickoff, the Athletic Association dropped a bombshell. Due to a scheduling conflict with a state-level concert that had been booked months earlier, the final was cancelled. Not postponed. Cancelled. The association proposed crowning co-champions instead, splitting the trophy between both schools. Can you imagine? After an entire season, after both teams had sacrificed everything, they were just supposed to accept a participation trophy situation? The coaches were furious. The players were devastated. But here's where it gets interesting. The parents and the community refused to accept it. Within 24 hours, a group of parents from both schools did something unprecedented. They organized an underground final. I'm talking about a full-scale, legitimate football game, organized entirely outside the official system. No association approval. No official referees. No recognition from the state. Just pure, defiant determination to let these kids play for what they'd earned. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like some casual pickup game in a random field. Oh no. These parents went all out. They secured an old community field on the outskirts of town that hadn't been used for official games in 15 years. They brought in retired referees who volunteered their time. They organized a medical team. They arranged for field lighting using borrowed equipment from a local construction company. They even printed unofficial tickets and programs. Word spread through the town like wildfire. And here's what nobody expected. Instead of the controversy dividing the community, it united everyone. North versus South didn't matter anymore. This became Riverside versus the system. This became about giving these kids what they deserved. The Athletic Association caught wind of the plan and threatened both schools with sanctions. They said any player who participated would be ineligible for any future district competitions. Any coach involved would face suspension. They sent formal warnings. They contacted local authorities about potential liability issues. But nobody backed down. The parents organized secret practices in the middle of the night. Players trained without their coaches officially present, though mysteriously, detailed practice plans kept appearing in lockers. The entire operation ran like something out of a heist movie, with coded messages and careful planning to avoid official detection. October 23rd arrived, the original date for the cancelled final. The association had their concert at the main stadium. And 5 miles away, at that old community field, something magical was happening. People started arriving at 4 in the afternoon, 3 hours before the scheduled 7 o'clock kickoff. Families brought lawn chairs and blankets. Local food vendors showed up with trucks, donating proceeds to the school's athletic programs. Someone arranged for a local radio DJ to provide live commentary over a PA system. Another group set up a scoreboard using borrowed equipment from a nearby college. By 6:30, there were over 5,000 people surrounding that field. 5,000. In a town of 40,000. That's more than had ever attended an official final at the main stadium. People were parking half a mile away and walking. The local police, who were supposed to shut the whole thing down, instead helped with traffic control. Even the mayor showed up, though he claimed he was just passing by. The players arrived in buses that parents had rented privately. Both teams walked onto that field with more intensity, more focus, more pure emotion than anyone had ever seen at a high school game. The retired referees took their positions. The crowd fell silent. And the game began. What happened over the next 2 hours and 15 minutes became the stuff of legend. This wasn't just good football, this was the kind of game where every single play mattered. Riverside North scored first, a touchdown run that brought their entire side of the crowd to their feet. Riverside South answered back with a long bomb pass that seemed to hang in the air forever. Back and forth it went. The score was tied at 14 going into halftime. Then 21. Then 28. Neither team would give an inch. Players were diving for every ball, fighting for every yard like their lives depended on it. Because in a way they did. This was their one shot. There would be no next game. No do-over. This was everything. The fourth quarter started with South leading 35-28. North mounted a comeback, scoring with 4 minutes left to tie the game. The crowd was absolutely losing their minds. People who had never even met were hugging strangers. Parents from opposing sides were so caught up in the moment that rivalry didn't matter, they were just witnessing something pure and beautiful and real. South got the ball back with 2 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock. They drove down the field methodically. With 40 seconds left, they were at North's 15-yard line. Fourth down. Field goal range, but barely. The kicker was a junior who had missed 3 attempts earlier in the season. The snap was perfect. The hold was solid. The kick went up. And I need you to understand something about this moment. This kick, in this unofficial game that wasn't supposed to happen, with no official recognition, no championship record, nothing on the line except pride and community respect. This kick had 5,000 people holding their breath. Had players from both teams frozen in position. Had parents gripping each other's hands. The ball sailed through the uprights as time expired. South 41, North 35. The explosion of sound from that crowd could be heard across town at the official stadium where the concert was wrapping up. South's players dogpiled their kicker. North's team, despite the loss, walked across the field and shook every opponent's hand with genuine respect. Coaches who weren't officially there emerged from the shadows to hug their players. And then something happened that nobody had planned for. Both teams gathered at midfield. The captains held a quick conversation. Then they called everyone over, players from both sides, and they stood together in a giant circle. Someone had brought the old district trophy from a storage unit, a trophy that hadn't been awarded in years. The captains held it together, lifted it above their heads as one, and the entire crowd, north and south, erupted in applause. The Athletic Association tried to pretend the game never happened. Official records still list that year as having co-champions by default. But in Riverside, everybody knows the truth. They know who won. More importantly, they know what happened when a community refused to let bureaucracy steal something meaningful from their kids. The local newspaper, despite pressure from the association, ran a full front-page spread with photos from the game. The headline read, "The final that mattered most." The article is still framed in virtually every business downtown. The field where they played, that old forgotten community space, was renovated the following year with private donations and is now officially named Unity Field. Players from that game still gather every 5 years for a reunion. They bring their families. They tell stories. And they explain to their kids about the night that an entire town came together to make something right, even when the system said no. Several of those players went on to college football. A few even played professionally. And whenever they're interviewed, whenever they talk about their career highlights, they always mention that game. Not the college championships. Not the professional success. That unofficial final in a forgotten field with borrowed lights and volunteer refs and 5,000 people who refused to let it not happen. The coaches from both teams, who faced those threatened sanctions, were quietly given awards by the State Coaching Association 5 years later. The Athletic Association eventually changed their policies about playoff scheduling to prevent this situation from ever happening again. And while they never officially recognized that game, they never actually followed through on any of their threats either. Because here's what they realized, and what this whole story is really about. Sometimes the rules exist to serve the people, not the other way around. Sometimes the most meaningful moments happen when ordinary people decide that what's right matters more than what's official. That night wasn't about North versus South. It wasn't even really about football. It was about a community drawing a line and saying, "Not here, not to our kids." It was about parents who saw their children's heartbreak and refused to accept it. It was about players who wanted so badly to compete that they risked their futures. It was about an entire town remembering what sports are actually supposed to be about: community, character, and giving young people a chance to achieve something meaningful. 20 years later, people in Riverside still talk about the final with capital letters, and everyone knows exactly which game they mean. Not the one from last season. Not some official championship from the record books. The one that never should have happened. The one that broke all the rules. The one that became legend. And you know what the best part is? 5 years after that game, when the District Association finally scheduled another final at the main stadium between North and South, attendance was half of what it had been at Unity Field. Because once you've witnessed something real, something born from pure determination and community spirit, the official version just doesn't hit the same. That's the story of a final that technically never existed but somehow became more real, more important, and more memorable than any official championship before or since. A game played in defiance, remembered in legend, and treasured by everyone who was there as proof that sometimes the right thing to do and the legal thing to do aren't the same thing. And sometimes, when you're lucky enough to live in a place like Riverside, you get to witness a community choosing right over easy. That's what happens when people decide that meaning matters more than recognition. That's what happens when a town refuses to let paperwork steal joy from their kids. That's what happens when 5,000 people show up to something that's not supposed to exist and make it more real than anything official could ever be. The final that never should have happened became the final that could never be forgotten.